I went to Boston to work at this job. This guy's like, I'll be your mentor. I'll take you under my wing. It'll be great. And the week I got there, he left. And I was like, oh crap, I wrecked my life. I wrecked my life. Why'd I come here? Why'd I move here? Why'd I do everything here? And I did what everyone would do in a moment where they think they wrecked their lives. And Joe, you know this. I said, every one of us would do. I said, I'm going to write a novel. And I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote my first novel. I got 24 rejection letters. And there were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejections, right? Which means a couple people are writing me twice to make sure I hear them loud and clear. But I fell in love with the process of writing. And that was my origin right there. It was like those two moments was how I became a writer.
Today's episode sponsor is Aditon, creators of Aditon Operations Kit, the military's go-to software for personnel and equipment accountability. AOK goes where you do, any network, anytime, any place. I got to know Aditon's co-founders, James and JJ, several years ago. They are former Army NCOs who have years of experience in the tech industry. They understand that most military jobs aren't performed behind a computer desk. Personnel and operations are distributed, but accountability of property is paramount to making mission. That's where Logi, AOK's equipment management software, comes into play. Formerly known as 92X, Logi is a next generation of equipment management for the military. Logi offers unrivaled features for military teams on the go. Ingest and digitize your primary and sub-hand receipts. Generate and share sub-hand receipts and DA forms with your team in just a few clicks. Capture photos, tags, and notes across your team to build context on the state of equipment. Get easy on-the-go access to critical property records. Logi is custom built for the modern military professional. It gives you your valuable time back so you can get back to the mission at hand at home or in the field. Whether you're doing monthly inventories or preparing for deployment, Logi is your pocket property book, giving you real-time visibility into equipment status and mission readiness. Logi is currently in use across the U.S. Army Special Forces, and it's expanding. For a limited time, listeners of the From the Green Notebook podcast can try out Logi for free. Visit aditonppc.com/FTGN-Logi to get started. That's ADYTONPBC.com/FTGN-LOGE. How do I know what I think until I see what I say?
The Green Notebook, carried by military leaders around the world. Within those pages are sweat, tears, triumphs, and the hard-won lessons of life. Lessons worth sharing. Each week, the team dives into the notebooks of military leaders, business professionals, authors, athletes and coaches, and entertainers to share lessons and help you lead with the best version of yourself.
Welcome to another episode of From the Green Notebook. I'm your host, Joe Byerly, and today we're diving into the Green Notebook of Brad Meltzer, best-selling author, storyteller, and one of the most curious minds working today. Brad has written more than 70 books across thrillers, history, and children's literature with millions of copies sold worldwide. His newest novel, The Viper, continues the Zig and Nola series set in around Dover Air Force Base and pulls readers into a world where secrets, service, and humanity collide. What makes this conversation special isn't just Brad's success as a writer, but how deeply rooted his work is in people, teachers who changed his life, strangers who showed unexpected kindness, service members who opened doors he never planned to walk through. Brad doesn't just chase ideas, he follows curiosity, and along the way uncovers stories that matter. In this episode, we talk about falling in love with the process instead of the outcome, why transformation is the hardest magic trick of all, and how creativity is built one grain of sand at a time. We explore grief, service, military mental health, and why reading remains one of the most powerful tools for growth, especially in uncertain times. So please grab your green notebooks and welcome to the show, Brad Meltzer.
So good to be here.
I have a hypothetical question I want to begin with. Have you ever met somebody and had 1,000 questions to ask them, but you had to limit it to 60 minutes or less?
To just 750 questions, yes.
Yeah, it's like one of the best things about podcasting is, especially with this podcast, is I get to meet people who are very well established, have large, massive audiences, but I haven't necessarily met myself or been introduced to their work. And so, The Viper is the first of your books that I've read, and I grew up reading Jeffrey Deaver and James Patterson. And it was just, I haven't touched a thriller in so long. And man, it was like being a kid again, jumping into it.
I appreciate that. I mean, but the funny thing is, I feel the same way. Like I grew up on thrillers, and I just stopped reading them because I was like, they got predictable, they got whatever, they got, God bless the guys who can do them well. But I was, and that's why it was my first thriller in 4 years, and I was like, no, I got something to say here. I want to say it.
Well, I want to throw back, and I've been like listening to all these other episodes you've been on for last week as I've been preparing for this, as well as is reading The Viper. And I promise I have some Zig and Nola questions I'll get to, but I'm really interested because for me, writing is my second career. As I retired last year. But for you, like, what is your origin story, your superhero origin story when it comes to getting into writing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, it really started with my ninth grade English teacher, a woman named Sheila Spicer. And Miss Spicer changed my life with 3 words. She said, "You can write." I was like, "Well, everyone can write." And she's like, "No, you know what you're doing." And she tried to put me in the honors class. I had some sort of conflict. She said, "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to sit in the corner for the entire year, ignore everything I do on the blackboard, ignore every homework assignment I give," which was really saying was, "You're going to do the honors work instead, and you'll thank me later." And I did. I did that for the entire year. And when my first book was finally published a decade later, I went back to her classroom. I knocked on the door, and she said, "Can I help you?" I said, "My name is Brad Meltzer. I wrote this book, and it's for you." And she starts crying. And I'm like, "Why are you crying?" And she said, I was going to retire this year because I didn't think I was having an impact anymore. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, you have 30 students, but we have one teacher. And my origin was right there. It was think of the first person who ever told you were good at something. That person just makes a huge impact. Miss Spicer was the one who put me on that path. And then, I went to graduated college. I had so much debt to pay off. I went to a job that wasn't working out. And I didn't think about writing. I was a history major. I was like, whatever, I'm going to do that. And I went to Boston to work at this job. This guy's like, "I'll be your mentor. I'll take you under my wing. It'll be great." And the week I got there, he left. And I was like, oh crap, I wrecked my life. I wrecked my life. Why'd I come here? Why'd I move here? Why'd I do everything here? And I did what everyone would do in a moment where they think they wrecked their lives. And Joe, you know this. I said, every one of us would do. I said, I'm going to write a novel. And I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote my first novel. I got 24 rejection letters. And there were only 20 publishers. I got 24 rejections, right? Which means a couple people are writing me twice to make sure I hear them loud and clear. But I fell in love with the process of writing, and that was my origin right there. It was like those 2 moments was how I became a writer.
How important is it to, you said, fall in love with the process, not necessarily the outcome of writing? Because I think a lot of people want to say they've written a book or they've written a New York Times bestseller or they've wanted to do X, Y, or Z. But it's really that process of doing something that's worth falling in love with.
Yeah, no, listen, the process sucks. I mean, there are worse ways to spend your day, but like the process is the hard part, right? The process is, building a novel is like building a sandcastle, a grain of sand at a time, right? On day one, you put down one page, you put down one grain of sand, you're like, oh, I got nothing. And day two, you put your second page. I got 2 pages. What's that? Second grain of sand. I got nothing. And you really do have nothing for so long. But then somewhere, if you do it every day, you eventually start getting a little pile of stuff. And I to this day, I've been doing this almost 30 years, and I bitch and complain and moan, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is so hard. And I remember my buddy David Baldacci years ago, my second book I was working on, and it was so hard for me to do. I was like, I'm struggling with it. I'm fighting this thing. It was like riding the dragon. And I was just like, I can't this. And I remember he took me out to lunch and he looked me in the eye and he said, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like, and you forget that because you're so excited to be able to talk to these imaginary friends. You just forget that, like, this is hard. It's hard to like make worlds out of nothing with a blank sheet of paper. There are harder jobs, make the mistake. You know, I was the first in my family to go to a 4-year college in my immediate family. So I remember what, what it was like to not pick up the phone at the end of the month because that's when the bill collectors called. I know what it's like, but it doesn't mean that this job has ever gotten any easier for me. I don't think I've learned anything.
Hey, could you actually, like, you mentioned growing up and you said you know what it's like to avoid bill collectors. Could you talk about that real quick? Like as far as like your childhood and I
Yeah,
guess the effect that's had on you.
I mean, my dad lost his job at 39 years old, had nothing left, nothing. Had $1,200 to his name was it. He was never good with money, and we moved down from New York to Florida, which is where my grandmother lived in. And my grandmother had a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was myself, and it was 6 of us. It was myself, my sister, my mom, and my dad, plus 2 grandparents lived in this 1-bedroom apartment because they didn't even have money to like get an apartment. And everyone in the condominium in Florida, because that's what condominiums do in Florida, was complaining and bitching and moaning and like, just like, get them out of here. You can't have 6 people in an apartment. There's too many people. This is bad. And everyone was trying to get us evicted. And it was terrifying to me as a kid. But my grandmother's neighbor across the hall was like, I see what's happening to your family. I'm going to move out for a couple of weeks. Why doesn't you take my apartment? And that way your family can have some peace and won't be evicted. And it was the nicest thing anyone's ever done for my family. And I remember her name as a kid, hearing it as Mercy, but as a kid, I always heard it as Mercy. But make no mistake, mercy and empathy is what she showed us. And you don't forget that. You don't forget someone who does something like that to your family. And I gave a fake address so I could go to the wealthy public school that I couldn't afford to go to. And there I got good teachers like Miss Spicer. Like those things made me who I am. They give me my appreciation for what I have. It's what I still rely on to write on. But and it's also probably what let me beat myself up enough to be like, you can't bitch and moan. You got a fake job. You're talking to imaginary people all day. And that messed me up too.
Do you think I'm a huge fan of Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey?
Of course.
And, like it's one of those things. And I've thought about this myself too. Like, the random encounters I had along the way that, helped me discover writing once I had already started down the path of the military career. And then, even like right before I'm about to retire, the chance conversation with Ryan Holiday saying, "Hey, come work with me as soon as you get out." And man, it's like doors just started opening once I embraced that kind of like internal journey of like, yeah, I do think I want to be a writer, and this is what I want to go do for the rest of my life. And all of it, and it has it like you were saying, like it's not easy. But like I look back at all the like small little moments in my own past, and it's kind of like led me on this path that I am right now. And you kind of see like all the dots connecting in the rear view now.
Well, everything in the rear view connects, right? I mean, you can force it to. I remember this. I heard this piece of advice that said, "Life is all about in your life. You're going to find closed doors and open doors, and your job is when you see an open door, is you walk through it, and that's all life is. It's just continually to find the open door and keep walking through the open ones. And for me, that's so much of life has been. I can tell you that early in my career, back during right as 9/11 happened, I got an email that was from a sailor on a submarine. And he wrote to me and he was like, "Hey, Brad, I can't tell you where we are. We're in a secret location. Our sub does not have doesn't have a big library at all. We have a couple books, but we got one of yours. And I just want to tell you at this really scary moment in time is when my 3rd book was coming out. Your book has brought me some peace when I needed it. And thank you for that." I thought that's the nicest thank you I've ever heard in my life. I was like, I got to do something nice for this sailor. So I called my publisher. I said, "Can I get 10,000 books donated to the USO?"
Wow.
And they said, "Yeah." And I'm like, that was easy. So I called another publisher. I said, "Can I get 10,000 books?" Yeah. I called another. "Can I get?" Yeah. And by the time we were done, we got 40,000 books donated to the USO. And I got involved with the USO because now I started knowing people there. And as the war was winding down, they would bring in thriller writers over. They would bring like groups of like 6 of us over to entertain the troops. And I remember they took us to Kuwait at the time. We went to Oman, Qatar. I've been to Cuba, and I've done Pacific Fleet. I've been all over the world with the USO since then. But on our first stop, this one soldier stands up and he's like, "Hey, Brad, I just want to thank you for all the books you donated to the USO." And I'm like, "How do you even know? Nobody knows that. How do you know that?" And he said to me, "When I was stationed in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were stacks of your books, always said courtesy of the USO. I knew you had to have donated them. So thanks,
Wow.
Brad." And I said to him, "Dude, you got it all backwards. I'm here to thank you. You screwed it all up. Like the thank you's backwards. I need to thank you." But what I realized is I needed to thank that sailor. I had to find that sailor. So I come back from my first USO trip and I track down the sailor. His email like bounced back, but I tracked down his number, looked him up, and I said, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but like nearly a decade ago, you wrote me this email from a submarine and it got me involved with USO. And now I've traveled around the world with them. And I just want to tell you how much good you've put into the world just by being so nice and saying thank you." And I figure he's going to be all, like emotional and feel good. And he's dead silent. And we're on the phone with someone, something's wrong. And I'm like, "Dude, you okay?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "What's wrong?" And he says, "My mother just died a few days ago from breast cancer." And what he has no idea of is my mother had just died from breast cancer.
Wow.
And I say to him right there, I go, "I think I'm here to deliver a message to you." And he's like, "What's the message?" And I said, "When my mom died, everyone gave me useless advice. No one said anything that was helpful, but one person said something that was actually useful to me. And I think I'm supposed to pass it to you." He says, "What's the advice?" I said, "Our mothers never leave us, ever." And he starts crying. And because he's crying, I'm getting emotional. I'm not one of those people who thinks like rainbows and unicorns, or like how the world works. But sometimes we feel like we're profoundly alone. And other times we feel like we're profoundly connected. And because of this guy, I got involved with USO. I started learning about Dover Air Force Base. And that's all
Mm.
my books have been based and set in Dover. And, for the past 10 years now. But why? Because that was an open door for me. That one sailor opened that door for me. So yeah, I can connect all the dots backwards.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's what I was wondering. Like, uh, of all the, people with backgrounds that you could be writing about, the fact that Zig is a mortician at
Yeah, a
Dover,
mortician
like,
at Dover Air Force Base of all places, right? I
yeah,
mean, and it's, here's the thing is, and obviously I know your audience knows what Dover is. We all, but a lot of people don't. And, and I did not. I had no idea. My grandfather served in the military, but I had no idea that, all the fallen soldiers and service members are going to Dover. But I'd seen the place. You see the flag
right.
covered coffins coming off. Everyone knows that part. But what I didn't know is that's where all the astronauts, when the space shuttle exploded, their bodies went to Dover too. And that when, uh, on 9/11, the Pentagon victims all went to Dover, and all of our spies across the globe, whether it's the CIA or anywhere else, when their secret mission goes wrong, their bodies go to Dover too, which means Dover's a place that's filled with secrets. And I love secrets. And I just was like, I got to find out more about this place. And I remember going there and just asking the morticians there. And the morticians there, well, these are like, they'll spend 12 hours smoothing a soldier's, rewiring their jaw, smoothing it over with clay because a family wants to see their son one last time, or rebuilding someone's hand for hours because a mother says, "I want to hold my son's hand one last time." These are the best of us working on the best of the best of us. And I was completely moved by that. I had unprecedented access to Dover, and I've sent my entire series from The Escape Artist to The Lightning Rod to the new one to The Viper are all set there because I was so moved by what I saw there and was like, this character sees everything. He knows everybody's secrets. Like, what a great place to set a thriller.
What are some of the, I mean, like, what are some of like the craziest, uh, you know, plot ideas that you've gotten from that relationship with?
Yeah, I mean, the very first one, I always go in and I always say to everyone, I'm like, how do you send a secret message, or could you say, like, I'm always looking for secret ways to communicate. That's just like the number one thing as a thriller writer you need. And I was like, have you ever had a body come in and maybe there was like a tattoo on it that was crazy, or something like a message? Could you like, and I'll never forget that the mortician there said that if you're on a plane and your plane's about to go down, and you take out a sheet of paper and you write a note, a farewell note, and you eat the note, that upon the crash, depending on the height of the plane, the liquids in your stomach will actually protect the note. And I'm like, that's a crazy idea. And he was like, it's not an idea, it really happened. And
Wow.
so the escape artist opened up with, my main character Zig's at Dover Air Force Base. A body comes in of a fallen service member. It's a woman named Nola Brown. And he knows Nola from when she was 12 years old. She saved the life of his daughter. She's like, oh my gosh, she's grown now. She died in the military. I'm going to make sure to take care of this body, show it the respect it deserves. And he opens up the body and he remembers Nola had a scar in her ear, but when he checks the ear on this body, there's no scar. And then he opens up the body, and inside the stomach, there's a sheet of paper. And he uncrumples it from this airplane crash that she was in. And when he looks at the note inside, it says, Nola, you were right. Keep running. And he realized Nola Brown is not dead. Nola's alive. She's on the run. She's the escape artist. And that's chapter 1 of The Escape Artist. But it all came from this mortician at Dover Air Force Base telling me this crazy real story that actually happened.
Wow. And I want to ask about Nola, but can I share a quick communication story with you?
Yeah, please.
So the book Ryan and I are working on right now is a biography on James Stockdale. He spent almost 8 years as a POW in Hanoi. So part of the research is interviewing these POWs, and guys that were junior officers, back in the late 60s, early 70s are now 80-year-old men.
Sure.
And I remember I was Zooming with a guy named Paul Galanti, who was a POW, and he was telling me about these reunions. And, like his memory's going in and out during this Zoom session. And so, it's faltering and everything else. And then he says that he remembers going to these reunions and the guys would talk across the room to each other. And when they were in Hanoi, sometimes they would grab up on the bars to pull themselves up, and they would do one-handed sign language to communicate with each other. And he said, so at these reunions, if I saw, saw your buddy, he would call him over doing this. And the wives at the table would be like, are you talking about us? And he's like, no, but I saw this 80-year-old man, I'm sure he's got arthritis and all sorts of things. His fingers just started automatically moving.
That's
and
awesome.
I was like, man, that is just like out of the whole time we talked, I was like, this is absolutely amazing.
Amazing. I love that. Yeah, no, I mean, but that's what you look for, right? Everyone's like, where do you get the idea? I'm like, when you see it. I can tell you for the Viper, for the new book, I remember I was in a funeral home, and I'm walking around with this mortician there, again, looking for cool stuff. Like, that's what you do. And I see he's showing me all around the funeral home, but I see there's one door that's closed and it's got a padlock on it, a thick padlock. I'm like, so of course I'm like, well, what's in there? The moment I can't go, I'm like, what's in there? And he undoes the padlock and he opens it up, and inside is a closet full of old suits and old dresses looking like they're from the 1990s, like double-breasted suits with the big things. He realizes, explains to me, it's all the suits that people ask to be buried in before they die. Like these are clothes I want to be buried in. Like if you prepared for your funeral, like a lot of people, especially if you have no family, you pick out what you're going to wear to your own funeral. And there's people there's like a Jets jersey in there. There's like a hat that someone's like, put this on me. My wife hates this hat. She's my ex now. So make sure I'm buried in it as a final FU, like it's just really funny and human stuff. And then I had this thought. If you open up a bank account today, paperwork gets filed, and eventually the government could track that. And if you open up a PO box at also paperwork gets filed, and the government could eventually, if they want to, track that. But if you take the suit you're going to be buried in and you sew something inside the suit as in a hidden little secret compartment, you don't just have a great hiding spot, but you have the ultimate untraceable hiding spot that no one will ever find. And what happens in the very first chapter of The Viper is guy walks into the funeral home, holds the suit he's going to be buried in, hands it over, it gets locked in the closet. And soon after that, someone approaches him with a gun and says, where is it? I don't know what you're talking about. Where is it? Shoots him dead, checks him, pats him down. It's nowhere. Doesn't know where to find it. And you'll never believe who finds that suit in the closet. And I just ruined chapter 1 of The Viper, but that's chapter 1. And it just comes from just talking, walking around and talking to people and just finding that cool thing.
Is the fact that you write these thrillers, is it completely, I mean, the other books you write too, but is it like, does it kind of change your vision, I guess, your outlook on the world as you go around and meet people and, you hear random stories? Are you constantly like, is your brain kind of wired now for those those random factoids that
I
people are
mean,
like,
I don't know. I think I definitely am probably a bit more paranoid than most people that when I see a lock thing, I'm like, what's in there? Like I'm just like a lunatic for it. But,
okay,
but I also am very attuned to how kind people are when it comes to talking about their stuff. Like if you got a phone call tomorrow and was like, hey, Joe, I'm doing a book and it's going to be about a podcast guy. Can you talk to me for 10 minutes about it? You'd be like, yeah, most people are nice. Even in the Secret Service, I've had US presidents write, talk to me. Like most people are nice. They'll take the time because and I say I don't have a record. I'm writing fiction. It's all going to be fake. So I'm going to fake all the stories. But at least, and anyone who reads, like anyone from the military, I always get the comment back, like, thank you for what you do in the military for getting those details right. Like, why? Because I talk to people in the military to make sure I get them all right. Because
right.
when you're watching a movie or something, they get it wrong. You're like, come on, man, take 10 minutes and get it right.
I'd like to introduce you to our newest partner, Roger Bank, a modern digital military bank built by military members for military members. Whether you're stationed stateside or overseas, Roger is designed to meet the unique needs of our men and women in uniform. I recently opened an account myself, and the process was incredibly smooth. It took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Now, here's why I'm excited to partner with Roger. They offer high yield checking and savings accounts, zero account fees, early payday, and automatic savings with Roundup Match. Their military ready direct deposit form is even auto populated and signed by the CEO, saving you time and hassle. Plus, you get free global ATM access, real person customer support, and they even offer accounts for service members as young as 17. Funds are FDIC insured through Citizens Bank of Edmond, so you can bank with confidence and peace of mind. Visit roger.bank to learn more. That's ROGER.bank. This episode is sponsored by LSI. LSI is a service disabled veteran owned small business founded by an Army leader and combat veteran focused on finding exquisite solutions to wicked problems and providing affordable, agile, and responsive services at the nexus of IT and logistics. The company was built by a team of dedicated, service oriented leaders who have spent their professional careers operating inside complex, uncertain environments and missions across the federal government and private sector. LSI currently supports the Department of Defense, agencies across the federal government, and now offers its proven performance, support, and services to private industry by helping business leaders understand and modernize large, mission critical environments while keeping operations running efficiently, teams aligned in resource, and accountability intact. LSI's work spans enterprise IT operations, global logistics support, cybersecurity, data analytics and literacy, smart automation, and decision support systems used every day by thousands of professionals. Across every engagement, LSI brings the practitioner's mindset shaped by service, execution under pressure, and the belief that good leadership shows up in how systems, people, and decisions actually perform. Learn more about them at logistics-sys.com. That's logistics-sys.com. I love that. I appreciate you doing that too. I've done a little bit of work since retirement too. And it's the small things I think that we get from movies that people say in the military that we do not say in the
Oh,
military.
I have a guy, a buddy of mine, Scott, and he knows who he is, but he busts my balls for like, he just reads my books and is like, we'd never do this. We'd never do that. We never like, but he'll also tell me like, we have this, we have that. Like he's my, my inside person to make sure I'm doing justice and honoring like all that time you guys spend. I mean, it's incredible. And I like the reason I always picked Dover is because people should be thinking about that. One of the things that was very important to me when I was, when I was doing Dover now, I started doing Dover, we were still at war. But since
Right.
9/11, military suicides are 4 times higher than the deaths caused by combat. And that means 30,000 soldiers, right? There's only so far they can run. And I think it's like there's a mental health crisis that you all have been through that I know friends. I know who your friends are, like that, which of your friends have been through it. So I'm like, wait a minute, I can deal with that in this book as a little side thing to put in there so people hear it, even though yeah, you better believe I am when I got, because I'm like, I said to people at Dover are like, okay, what did when the war was going on, it was like a lot of IEDs, there were certain kinds of casualties that were coming in. And now it's a very different one. That's devastating to me.
Yeah, and while like as I was reading that part of the book where Zig is taking care of somebody who committed suicide, and I don't think that's ruining anything in the book.
No, not at all.
But I want to put a plug in too, for folks that are transitioning out. So, for 20 years, I feel like, at least in my career, I had my foot on the gas of my life, going from assignment to assignment. I think I moved like 12 times. I think I added up all the time away over the course of 20 years. And it was like a little over 5, I think. And that was just like napkin math. And so all of a sudden you retire. And if you take time after you retire to like figure things out, it's like somebody hit the brakes real quick and things get very quiet. And so even I I thought I was good, but apparently all those things that I was like wrestling with in the military, I was just pushing down. And when I had this space after retirement, they started bubbling to the surface again. And so a friend of mine, I was kind of like just, confiding in somebody. And she was like, hey, check out this program called Veterans Wellness Alliance. And if you are listening to this and you're struggling, I think it was within 24 hours, I like filled out the form, immediately got an email back, started the intake, and I was within counseling within weeks of that. And they offered me all sorts of stuff from inpatient program for a couple weeks to like do art to telehealth to in person. And so
I'm literally writing it down: Veterans Welfare
Veteran Wellness Alliance.
Veteran Wellness
Alliance. Yes. And so and what's crazy, and then I'll just move on. Like the first counselor didn't work out. I was like, I'm not really gelling with this person. Wrote him back, and they're like, all right, 24 hours later, we got you paired with somebody else.
Is it a nonprofit outside of the military or a part in
the
military?
No, it's a nonprofit outside. It's actually an alliance of different networks that work together, and it's all taken care of. Like I haven't paid a dime.
No, and listen, I mean, we are very, we have a rule. We always, if you are from the military, you can't afford a book at our signings, you can't afford a ticket to our show. Like they know, all my publishers know, like we'll get you in. Like what you guys come out, it's all feet on the gas, right? And when you guys come out, it is a, of course we can do those little things, but what you're talking about is a big thing, and I think it's important. Yeah. And for me, I'm sure you saw when it was in that part of the book. I think the only way you get people to do that is to destigmatize it. That you and I get to talk about this now, that I get to put it in a book like it's a nothing thing, like is make sure that people are talking. Because when you do it and you're alone, you're like, oh man, I shouldn't say anything because this is, I don't want to be look like I'm, the weird one, the odd one, the whatever, the weak one. But you're not the weak one when you go get help. That's a sign of strength, right? That's a sign of strength. And I think it's very important to normalize that and talk about it publicly.
Yeah, again, I appreciate that. Wasn't even the plan. And that's what's really, again, this is why I love this podcast is, I saw the pitch from Eileen about your book coming out. I was like, okay, well, I haven't really read a thriller in a while. I don't know. And I watched your commencement address and I was like, okay, like I'm going to give this book a shot. Love it. Huge.
Oh, so awesome. What I love most is it's the third book in the series, but I always write them. You could start anywhere.
I get to go back. Yes.
And right. And everyone said to me, can I read, one of our big blurbs, and it says the perfect place to meet Zig and Nola. And I love the fact you didn't need to know anything. You could jump right in and start with the Viper.
Yeah. And it's again, I will reiterate what you just said. You don't need to read the first books. I will be going back to those books. But I was able to quickly pick up on who these characters are. So if you didn't think it was odd enough that one of the main characters is a mortician, let's move on to Nola now.
Yeah, I mean, Nola is she's like my girl with the dragon tattoo, I guess is what people call her, but it's not really fair to anybody to say that. I was in a warehouse years ago, over a decade ago, and on a military base on Fort Belvoir in Virginia. And they're walking me through this warehouse. It's like the end. It's packed with crates and stuff. And it It was like the end of the of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I'm like, and they have all these paintings, framed paintings. They have Adolf Hitler's paintings from World War II they got there, like kicked in by the GIs who found them, like craziness. But then you also have all these military paintings that are done by like privates and, to generals. Like, I'm just like, why does the military have all this art? It made no sense. And I start, they explained to me, and this is true, that since World War One, the Army has had an actual painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen. And whether it's storming the beaches of Normandy or whether it's going to Vietnam or 9/11, I'm like, you're telling me that everyone's racing in with guns blazing, and you got one guy's racing in with nothing but paintbrushes in their pockets? Like, that guy's crazy. I got to meet him. I want to meet that guy. He sounds crazy. And they said, you mean her? You want to meet her? And it was a woman at the time named Amy Brown, Staff Sergeant Amy Brown. And she was kind enough to meet with me. Her headquarters was right there in that museum. And I built this character. She wasn't based on her, except I gave her the last name just to thank her, of this woman named Nola Brown. And as a painter, Nola, when she paints things, she can see new details that she misses with the naked eye. So she can see that you pull your belt buckle with, which way your belt buckle tongue is facing. She knows whether you're right-handed or left-handed. She can see which knee you favor because that's the one you got knee surgery on, is the other one, and that's the one she should kick at. She can see that, when she's looking for the sniper in the room, she can find the guy who has crow's feet on just one eye and not the other, and that's where the sniper is. She can find the flaw in everything. And Nola is just unstoppable. She will never, ever give up. I love this character, and people love the character. And, Zig as the mortician believes you put good in the world, and that's how you make the world a better place. And that's a beautiful idea. It's a completely naive idea. It's an idea worth fighting for. But Nola believes you want the world to make sense. You grab it by the throat and you force it to make sense, especially when you see someone being picked on. And that's also an idea worth fighting for. And I think it's just, me trying to figure out which version of me is right. They're both me. Right. So, which one's right, war or love? But the world only works when you have both.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm curious, like, where do you get your ideas? Like, I remember I was talking to a guy named Terry Wolf, who was a screenwriter for the Mad Max series. And, he's written a couple novels, and he was telling me like it was just like he was walking down the street one day and was like, I wonder what it would be like if a father and son fought side by side in a war, and then wrote like this 700 book about, where like time travel was a major part of it. How does that work for you? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's same thing. I mean, ideas are there. It's like adventure. Adventure is out there. Like, ideas are out there. They're everywhere. Like, they're behind that clock door. That, you just have to be curious about life. I feel like one of the great lessons I take away now that I've been doing this. I used to think like the story I told in my head is like, I'm good at finding secrets. I'm not good at any of those things. What I am good at is I'm freaking curious. I will ask you a billion questions until I understand. And I just been able to kind of sniff my way to like the cool thing in the room. I don't know if it's really the cool thing, but it's a cool thing to me. And the one thing I rely on is I'm not that special. If I think this dumb thing is really cool and I can't believe no one's ever written about that, then there are going to be other people out there who think the same. And that's been what's true. And for me, like, a good idea is, again, like walking down that hallway. You can 50 people can walk down the hallway and just miss it. But you gotta ask and say, what's that? What's that there?
Now, you've written over 70 books, some of them being, talking about thrillers like this. You do some historical books. You do books for children. How important is transformation as far as like not getting stuck?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you're talking about some making some magic now. So last year I got to give the commencement address at the University of Michigan. And it was cool for me. Yeah, there were 70,000 people in the stadium. But what was really cool for me is my son was in the stadium graduating that day. So I was talking to one. And I said, I want to speak about magic. And if you talk to magicians, they'll tell you there are 4 types of magic tricks. Put aside illusions and escapes, there's only 4 types of tricks. 1, you make something appear. 2, you make something disappear. 3, you make 2 things trade places with each other. And the 4th magic trick is the one you just mentioned, the hardest trick of all, transformation. And it's tricky, right? How do you transform? And I think, I used to love the Hall of Mirrors when I was younger. Because I would look at it and you turn your head just slightly and you can kind of see all those different versions of yourself. And that's to me what life is. The person who thinks they're the smartest in the room is not the smartest in the room. That's just the one with the most fragile ego. The smartest person in the room is the person who knows that there's always more to learn, that there's always more to figure out, that there's always more to be curious about. And I think what we have to do in life as you go through it is never, if you start writing in pen, like everything and write everything in stone, it all becomes hard and brittle. What you have to do is instead write in pencil and be unafraid to use the eraser and realize there's just so much more out there that we can do. And that is a one good trick. I'm not, trick number 1, 2, and 3, I'm still learning, but I was always pretty good at transformation. I was always good at acknowledging there's still so much I don't know. And that's what drives me to keep kind of going forward.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, do you still see yourself evolving as a like?
If
You just
not,
don't
dude,
know where
I'm
it's going.
dead. No, it's funny. My brother-in-law used to always say to me, he's like a really smart, guy who does like all these business meetings. And he always say to me, like, what do you see yourself in 10 years? You have to map it out and figure it out and do that. And again, for some people that works great. It's a wonderful thing. But I remember I used to listen to him and always be like, why does that question bother me so much? Like, why does it kind of like pushes a button for me? And I finally realized, it took me a while, and I was like, oh, because as a writer, why would I ever want to know how the story ends? I don't ever want to know the ending. Like, I like the fact that I don't know what it's going to bring, because then life is exciting. And I think like you were mentioning, when you come out of the military, you have your foot on the gas, and then suddenly you hit the brakes and you're like, well, what do I got to do? I got to do, I got to do, I got to do. It's like, take it a little easy on yourself, man. Take it a little easy, be a little gentle with yourself, be a little gentle with the world, and realize you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know it all to be like, I understand we got to pay our bills. I understand that, as well as anybody, but it doesn't mean you have to have everything. I certainly don't have everything figured out. I can give you all this advice and sound whatever on this podcast, but I'm giving you the best versions of me right now. I'm giving the versions that make you like me. I'm giving the versions that make you go like, oh, what a great guy. But like, I'm flawed too. I lose my temper. I get this. I get pissed at that. Like, we all screw it all up. And I think if you just kind of forgive yourself a little bit, and don't allow yourself to write the ending, you have a little bit easier time at it.
Yeah, I think that, for me, coming out, like I didn't know what I knew. I wanted to be a writer. I just didn't know how that was going to work out.
Yeah.
And like it's working out right now, which is awesome. But like I've been doing different things, and it's just kind of experimenting to see like what I like, what like if I'm doing something and I don't like it, then I just quit doing it.
That's
And
it. That's how you're supposed to do it. Walk through the open doors.
yeah, it's just data for me. But I think it's a mindset shift, because before I had an entire career roadmap where I could tell you that I was going to be in school 10 years from now. And I hated that question too. I hated doing, where do you see yourself 3 to 5 years? Because for me, it's like, I want to find something that I'm enjoying, and I wake up every day. And people are asking me like, well, how's retirement? And like, I don't have the scary Sundays anymore. And I, like Friday is just another day of the week. Like I seriously enjoy like waking up every morning and doing it, but I had to do the whole 20 to get to this point where I could, start figuring this stuff
Listen,
out.
we're all works in progress. I mean, it's not a bold statement, right? But I think the thing, we all know that, right? We all know that we don't have it all figured out. We know it intellectually, but you got to feel it. You got to like open your heart and like allow yourself the grace. For me, I buried both my parents, and it took me a long time to kind of like, forgive and allow myself the grace to mourn them properly. You're actually catching me today is my mother's, what would have been her 81st birthday. So she's just been on my mind all day. And my parents were like total lunatics. Like my dad used to go in every Barnes and Noble and be like, yeah, I'm here for Brad Meltzer's new book. He's my favorite author. And they're like, Mr. Meltzer, we know he's your son. We know, we got it. But and it was crazy and a mess, and had a temper and get in the fights, and like he was a bruiser, but like he was also like loving and warm-hearted, and like the crappiest romantic comedies you'd ever think in your life. Like it's never simple. People are complex, and if you think like you're the one with all the answers and you know all the stuff, like you're missing the beauty of life. The beauty is in the flaws. The beauty is in the broken parts.
I'm going to ask you because I've been trying to think with my 8-year-old daughter. Today's her birthday.
Happy
Yelling,
birthday, my mom.
yeah, yelling outside the door. But like as a parent, how have you taken, your experience growing up with your parents, and you've given your kids a completely different experience? I guess like what are some lessons learned there for?
I hope I gave him a different experience. I used to say, of course I have, but now I'm like, or have I? Like again, I obviously I think that whatever I think what we do generationally is we get a hair more civilized, hopefully, ideally, every generation, right? Like my grandfather who served in World War II, he was a boxer in the military. He used to beat up my dad, used to punch him hard. Like this was bad. My dad had such an equal temper, but he wouldn't hit us. He'd punch the walls in the house. We'd have holes in every door in our house except for my bedroom. My sister in my bedroom had no punched hole in it because he was like, I'm still a lunatic. I'm still getting in the fights. I'll flip over pool tables when I get pissed off once, but I'm never punching my kids. So a hair more of that, right? I'm like, okay, I'm not getting into fights. I've been in them, but I'm not doing that. Like I'm like so I get all of that, but I still got a bit of a temper. Like, and my daughter's got a bit of a temper, but she's calmer than I am. And I feel like all we're all trying to do generationally is give us a notch better than what you had. And I feel like I used to be like, well, we got to do better than that. You could do it. And yeah, of course I can. And I'm there for my kids in a way my dad never could be for me because he didn't have the tools in his toolbox. He didn't know how to like deal with my feelings or on that bullshit. He's like, I don't know, figure it out. Like, and my kids come to me, I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out together. But if they get too soft, I'm like, figure it out, like, because I'm just like, no, you can't have everything given to you. So like, again, we refine, but you can't change who you are, baby. That
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
some of that stuff is in your genes. So I hope I did better. The one thing I did give my kids is I wrote a whole series of books for them. And that was a big part of my like being a dad. Like I was watching my kids looking at, people who are famous for being famous and overpaid athletes. And I was like, I can give them better heroes than that. And so I did a whole book series. I said to my daughter, you want to hear about Amelia Earhart? She's amazing. She flew across the Atlantic Ocean. My daughter's like, big deal, dad. Everyone flies across the Atlantic. Like, who cares? And then I told her this true story that when Amelia Earhart was 7 years old, she built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard. Took a wooden crate and she put roller skating wheels on the bottom and she shoved it to the roof of her tool shed. And then she came flying down the side, flies through the air, like her stomach bottoms out from under her. She's like, I love that feeling. I want that feeling back again. And that's the first time Amelia Earhart ever flew. She's 7 years old. And my 8-year-old daughter at the time was like, tell me that story again. And I was like, that's the book I'm writing. I am Amelia Earhart. We did I am Abraham Lincoln. We did I am George Washington. We did like amazing heroes throughout history. I'm like, you like sports? Here's I am Jackie Robinson. Like you like, being creative. Here's I am Mr. Rogers and here's I am Walt Disney. Like we just did we are the Beatles. Like we love doing these books. And I know everyone buys them for their kids, and I love that people buy them for their young kids, like 5 to 12 years old. But I wrote them for my kids. It's just me trying to be a good dad. So that's the one thing I felt like I hopefully did right by them on.
Yeah, and you gave the speech too. I mean, like you said,
Yeah,
you were like
no,
talking
yeah,
directly to
that's
your.
it. Directly to my son. That was a good trick that day. That was a good trick.
That's awesome, and it's funny that you're talking about like make like turning the dial a little bit more civilized. Like I grew up in the '90s, so I grew up like listening to Death Row Records in high
Sure.
school. Like that's what I listened to, and so like now my kids are my son's old enough. He's in high school, right? I listen to that, but he's like, Dad, could you like put something on without like so much
Yeah,
cussing
yeah,
in it?
yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what happened? Like,
But I will also say, mark my words, mark it down. When your son gets to college, not in high school, he'll never give you credit in high school. But once he gets to college, he's gonna be like, that's got some good music taste in here, though. I guarantee, because my kids they used to bust out my bullshit. They were like, what kind of crap does dad listen to? And now I'll catch them listening to the Beatles and Springsteen. And I mean, there's some good stuff and old rap and house music that I loved and grew up on because I grew up in Miami. Like, and they may roll their eyes, but they know there's some gold in there too.
That's great. I appreciate you making me feel a little bit better about it,
You'll
Brad.
see. You'll see. You'll get revenge, or you'll be avenged.
Last question is, and we'll wind this down. I got two more questions. From like a for reading. How important has reading been for your development as a writer, and just how important is it, for human beings to open up a book?
Listen, man, we're in crisis right now. Reading is at its lowest level. It just is. But what they found is the people who do them are the most happiest in life and are the most successful. The one thing, when you study them all, like when you study all of it, like who the best critical thinkers, who they are, you account for everything, money, schools, all the other things you can account for, race and everything else, and all the privilege that everyone can have. It's friggin' reading. It's reading that makes you successful. It's reading that gets your kids to actually be successful. So it changed my life. I had no money growing up, but my grandmother had a library card. It changed my life.
I appreciate that. All right, last question. Again, a lot of veterans. I grew up in the military in the shadow of 9/11. Could you talk about the flag?
Yeah, man. Oh, great last question. So I did a TV show on the History Channel called Brad Meltzer's Lost History. And I went to them and I said, I want to find lost historical artifacts. And on the very first show, we told the story of the missing 9/11 flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero. And we all know that flag, right? You've seen that famous photograph, firefighters raising the flag. What no one knew, I knew, was that that flag 24 hours later went missing. No one knew where it was. And so I went and did an episode on it. And when I had the script and I'm reading about it, I'm talking about it, and losing 3,000 people, that day just always devastated me. It was hard to fathom 3,000 lives. But my friend Michelle Heidenberger was a flight attendant on the Pentagon flight that day. And I always thought to myself, I want to bring this flag back for her. So when I was telling the story on the show, I ad-libbed in the middle of the script, I want this back for my friend Michelle. And I told the story about Michelle Heidenberger. And a few days after the first episode airs, a man walks into a fire station in Everett, Washington, in Washington, D.C., says, I saw the show Lost History. I actually have this flag. I offered $10,000 to anyone who brought it back. He's like, I have the flag. And he explained how he got it, where it came from. He's like, I want to turn it in. And we spent the better part of a year authenticating it with the former head of the FBI's Art Crimes Unit. Like we authenticated it, it had the stuff in it, and we had details about it that no one else had that we were able to get to make sure it was the right one. And when it was all done, the guy never took the reward. He was like, "No, I want this back for for America." And I said, "I want to go. I need to thank that guy. I need to thank that guy who brought it back. I want to. Has anyone thanked him?" And like, no. So give me his number. So I called the guy up, and he says, we have this whole talk, and he finally says to me, you don't want to know why I brought it back? I'm like, yeah, I've been dying to know. And he says, it was because of your friend, man, your friend Michelle. You mentioned her. He's like, it just got to me. He's like, and that's what I wanted to bring it back for. And I was so moved, but I'm like, oh my God, that was the one thing I ad-libbed in there at the last second.
Wow.
And I called my buddy, her husband, Tom, who's a dear friend. I mean, I remember when that happened in DC, like we were helping plan her funeral. I mean, it was terrible. And I called up Tom and I said, listen, the story's going to break on the front page of the paper in a few days. You're going to see it, but I'll tell you right now, we found the missing flag from 9/11. I just want you to know I was searching for it. I found it for Michelle. And I just wanted to tell you that. And he's like, dumbass, you didn't find that for Michelle at all. He's like, not at all. She'd be the first person to tell you that. You know who you found it for? I'm like, I don't know. And he says, you found it for me. You found it for my son. You found it for my daughter. You found it for all those after 9/11 who went on and served and fought and did things. That's who you found it for. And it was just one of the most humbling, amazing moments. I mean, we unveiled that flag in the 9/11 museum. It's now on display. I watched one of the last remaining soldiers from Pearl Harbor saluting it. Someone sent me a video. I mean, it's
Wow.
unbelievable. So that story has been one of the incredible moments of my life.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for sharing that and for all the work. Like I said, I got introduced to you when I started reading The Viper and, listening to the podcast, doing the background research. And I just, on behalf of service members, man, thanks for everything you've done for USOs and us as we were serving overseas for the last, 20 years.
Oh man, right. The thank you is to you. That is for sure.
Yeah, and thanks for making time for the podcast too.
You got it,
I know
brother.
you're super busy on this book tour, so I really appreciate it.
You got it. So good to see you.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of From the Green Notebook podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us gain visibility and the opportunity to help more people on their leadership journey. Also, make sure you check out our website at www.fromthegreennotebook.com. There, you can listen to past episodes, read leadership articles written by military leaders from around the world. You can sign up for our monthly reading list email where you can learn about new books that are coming out, and our Sunday reflection email that comes out every Sunday morning. Is really short. It's a 2-minute read, but I guarantee you it's going to start your week off on the right foot. Finally, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FTGN Notebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for From the Green Notebook. Again, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. I am humbled by the opportunity to learn these lessons alongside you. So please join us next week for another episode of From the Green Notebook, where we're going to help you lead with the best version of yourself.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the